Hi guys, we are the Med Nuggets. I am Malaysia.
And I am Vinuri.
We are final year medical students from Nanjing Medical University, China. We thought of creating a podcast to clear misconceptions related to health and medicine, to share advances in the medical field, and also to spread awareness on health related consequences of certain practices, medical conditions, and even common falsely advertised products like certain chocolate powders and cereals you find in the supermarket. So, this is a podcast for basically anyone, and you don't have to necessarily be in the medical field to understand our content.
Yeah, in fact, we actually want people outside of the medical field to engage with us because we feel that a lot of people are not aware of common misconceptions that could negatively affect one's health. And also because menstruation, even though menstruation is a topic that is mostly related to women, we also want men to engage with us because we feel that if men are aware of what women go through on a monthly basis, then they will be able to better support the women that they associate with. So I read this article where it said 23% of the girls in India, they drop out of school when they start menstruating. So if their brothers and if their fathers are aware that menstruation is just a normal thing, it's a normal body process, then they will speak up against these cultural beliefs and speak up against these practices. So these children, these girls, they can continue their education, and menstruation will not be a hindrance to their education. So get together with your brothers and sisters, sip on some coffee, and listen to our podcast.
Yeah, so today we are going to bust some myths regarding menstruation. We decided to start our podcast with this topic because menstruation is a taboo topic in our society. And since a lot of people don't talk about menstruation in public, there are so many myths that are being passed on from generation to generation.
Yeah.
And we strongly believe that menstruation should not be considered a taboo topic because this is something that every girl, every woman goes through every month for a significant portion of their life. And during this period, a woman experiences a lot of physical and emotional discomfort. So the right thing to do is not to avoid talking about this topic, but actually to talk about it more often.
Yeah.
And to support women, to educate them about menstrual hygiene and make them feel comfortable to talk about challenges they face during their periods.
Yeah.
And to be there for them, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there was this documentary that I watched where they said that girls, they were shocked when they first menstruated and they thought it was kind of something like a disease. So, and also they find this this menstrual topic very embarrassing to talk about, even with their family members, even with their close friends, they find it embarrassing. So I think it's very, very sad that girls all around the world, and also women, that they have to go through such insult, embarrassment, and even sometimes punishment for such a naturally occurring body process.
Yeah.
So in this podcast we will try to clear up common misbeliefs that are regarding menstruation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all right. So why don't we start with the most common myth, isn't it? Myth number 1: period blood is dirty or impure. So in India, a lot of people believe that menstruating women are not clean. And if a woman is on her period, she's not allowed to handle or prepare food or even go to the kitchen. So, and this is all because they think that if a woman is on her period, there's a good chance that any food that she may prepare can get contaminated. And so a woman must be purified before she's allowed to return to her household chores and day-to-day activities of her life in countries like India.
Yeah, and I read a similar thing on PubMed the other day, where they said that in India people think that girls or women who are menstruating, they release some kind of a smell or some kind of a chemical or something that turns preserved food bad. So they're not even allowed to touch soft foods like pickles because of that.
Yeah, I mean, guys, there's no scientific test till now that has shown that menstrual blood can spoil food. Actually, it gets better. In countries like India and Sri Lanka, if a girl is on her period, she's not allowed to enter certain religious places like the puja room. Girls who are on their periods, they are not allowed to offer prayers or even touch holy books. And this is all because of the cultural belief that period blood is something that's impure.
Yeah. And not just in Asia, I think even in countries like Ethiopia. Again, I read this on an article which interviewed girls in Ethiopia, and I asked about their experiences of menstruation. And there, the girls described menses as dirty, embarrassing, and shameful. And they had certain phrases and code words they used whenever they talk about menstruation because they didn't want to talk about it in public. So these phrases were like, the dirt is here, the hidden is here, and I'm not clean. Certain phrases like that they used to talk about menstruation. So it basically shows their understanding of what menstruation is. If they think it is something unclean, something dirty, and something that should be kept a secret and not talked about in public.
Yeah, actually, I think if we explain to people what the menstrual cycle is, I think people will be able to, get a better grasp of this whole thing. So, guys, the menstrual cycle is a part of a woman's reproductive system that prepares her body for a possible pregnancy. Right, so if we have a look at the average menstrual cycle, which happens over 28 days starting with the first day of your period, what happens in your body with each cycle is that your body prepares the lining of your womb, the uterus, to create that ideal environment for a possible pregnancy, for a baby. Right, so following sexual intercourse, if a sperm meets an egg and produces a zygote, which is a single cell that has the potential to grow into a human being, then in that case you will become pregnant. But if this does not happen, there's no point preparing the lining of the uterus for a pregnancy, for a baby, right? Yeah. So in that case, the lining of the uterus, your womb, will shed with blood and a few clots, and this is what you call menses. So this blood is actually arterial blood. It is not impure, it's not dirty, it's blood that is rich in oxygen and nutrients, and this blood is not impure at all. It's the same blood that circulates throughout your body.
Yeah. And also we're talking about the uterus, right? It is where the baby grows for 9 months in a mother's,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
If the uterus is filled with so much of impure and dirty blood, then I don't think it's an ideal environment for a baby to grow in, isn't it?
It's true. So true. And now another question that a lot of people might have at the back of your head is, why is the color of period blood not bright red if it's pure blood? So guys, the color of your period blood can range from light red to dark brown, and this change in color from the standard red color happens because of the oxidation of blood, which is the reaction of blood with oxygen. Right? So for example, fresh blood that comes off the uterus can look bright red in color because it's fresh, right? Whereas blood that has lingered in the uterus for a long period of time, this blood can look dark red in color. So this change in color of blood is because of this whole oxidation process. It's not because this blood is impure.
Yeah. All right. Now moving on to myth number 2, which is tampons can cause you to lose your virginity. So it is true that when you use tampons, it can cause your hymen to stretch, and when you keep using it for some time, this hymen can break. But just breakage of the hymen does not mean that you lose your virginity. Virginity is way beyond just the hymen. The hymen is just a very thin and stretchy membrane that lines the opening of the vagina, not even cover the vagina. And it can even break during, strenuous exercises like cycling. So this breakage of the hymen should not be thought as, losing one's virginity.
Yeah. And also a lot of women, they don't use tampons. They're afraid to use tampons because they think that wearing a tampon might be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Which is not true for most people because, during menstruation, our blood lubricates the vagina. So if a tampon is inserted properly, ideally it should not be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you still find it uncomfortable or weird, you could always go to the doctor. You could always use a lubricant to make the process much easier.
Yeah. And another thing I think people are worried is because tampons may get lost inside the vagina. There's actually a problem that even I feel like, it might happen. But again, it is not true because there is nowhere for the tampon to go.
Yeah.
Because the vagina, it is not an open-ended cavity. There is something called a cervix, which is like a door to your uterus. Like from your vagina, first you have the vagina, and then you have the door, and then you have the uterus. The door is the cervix, right? So when you insert anything to your vagina, this cervix prevents anything going past the vagina and going to your uterus.
Yeah.
So when you insert the tampon, it's just going to be in your vagina, not going way beyond that.
Yeah.
And also tampons, it comes with a string kind of a thing attached, so you can just pull the string out and you can take the tampon out. So that's So usually you won't have any problems in locating the tampon and taking it out. But if you are having any problems, or if you are finding it hard to find the tampon, then you could always go to the doctor, or you could ask help from a nurse and take it out. You can ask help from them to take it out.
Yeah, I mean, this is not something that's common,
Yeah.
but if in case you come across something like this, you can always go to your doctor
Yeah.
for help. And also, I think a lot of people are afraid to use tampons because of complications like toxic shock syndrome. So, what is toxic shock syndrome? Toxic shock syndrome is a fatal illness that happens in your body when bacteria release harmful substances into your bloodstream. So, when these harmful substances travel through your blood to organs of your body like your heart, your liver, your kidneys, it can damage these organs and produce symptoms like fever, diarrhea, vomiting, dizziness, a feeling of faintishness, and even a rash that kind of looks like a sunburn.
Yeah, so if you experience any of these symptoms, then you should immediately stop using your tampon and go to a doctor and get yourself treated. And also, even though toxic shock syndrome is an actual serious complication of using tampons, but you can avoid these complications by taking simple measures, simple precautions. And the most important thing is to not use tampons for more than 8 hours. The thing is, when you use tampons for long periods of time, bacteria can grow on these tampons, and then it can enter your uterus through your cervix, and it can also enter your bloodstream and then cause a complete systemic infection, which is very dangerous.
Actually, tampons can even cause tiny cuts in your vagina, right?
And then it can go to your bloodstream to that also, and then cause the infection.
Yeah, and not just tampons. If you leave anything in the vagina for too long, be it menstrual cups, diaphragms, cervical caps, all these things can cause toxic shock syndrome, isn't it?
Yeah. And also another thing you have to keep in mind is to not use super absorbent tampons, because super absorbent tampons can also increase your risk of developing toxic shock syndrome. So always go for low absorbent tampons to lower your risk and be safe. Yeah.
Alright guys, so moving on to myth number 3. Only women get periods. So I think something important that we need to remember and understand is that every single woman doesn't get a period. And every female who gets a period does not consider themselves a woman. For example, some transgender men, non-binary people, and some intersex individuals who have a uterus, all these people can get a period. So the other day I read this research study by Dr. Frank where she had interviewed 21 trans and non-binary people, and she had a talk about menstruation with each of them. So in this study, all except 2 individuals had menstruated in the past, or they were menstruating at that time. And in her article, she goes on to talk about the experiences of these people, like what they went through and their reaction to their first period, which shows us that not only women, but even these people, even transgender people, non-binary people, all these people can get a period. So the myth that only women get periods, it's false, and I think this is an important message we must convey to our society.
Yeah, it's important to recognize and respect, the diverse experience of people who menstruate, regardless of their gender identity.
Yeah.
And to use inclusive language and also healthcare practices that respect each person's identity.
Definitely, yeah.
Alright, so another common myth that I have encountered when I was a child is that my mom used to tell me to not engage in physical activities when I'm on my period. And I think the reason to this is because she thought that the pain may worsen when I'm doing any physical activities, or that I can bleed more than usual if I'm engaging in any exercises and all. But this is completely untrue.
Yeah, and another thing that a lot of people believe is that it is not good to swim during your period because it can cause health related complications, which is again not true. I mean, swimming during periods is absolutely safe and it doesn't cause any health related complications. Actually, aerobic exercises like swimming can help soothe your period cramps because it amps up your brain's production of endorphins. So endorphin is actually, guys, a happy hormone. Yeah, it's one of the 4 happy hormones in our body. So our body has 4 happy hormones, which are serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin. all these hormones can make you feel good, and your body releases them whenever you engage in activities that bring pleasure to you, like when you have sex, when you eat food, when you work out. So actually, these endorphins are chemicals that can relieve pain and stress. So swimming during periods is actually a good thing because it can boost your mood, it can cheer you up, and help you deal with your period symptoms a little bit better.
Yeah, and not just swimming. I think any physical activity can help you feel better during your periods, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But it is also important to listen to your body and then choose exercises that you're comfortable with and not overdo yourself. And if you experience any severe pain during your periods, it's best to go to a doctor and get yourself checked and see if there are any underlying problems that's causing that pain.
Yeah, I think you can always engage in exercises like yoga, Pilates, and all this stuff.
Yeah,
right?
it's
They
more
are
calming.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so another absurd myth that I have come across is that your first period is due to having sex with a boy, and if you don't have sex with a boy, then you won't get your period. So this is very absurd, and I read this again in the same Ethiopian article that I mentioned before. And over there, if a girl menstruates before their marriage, they are being shamed for it and they're being punished for it. And this belief came because in Ethiopia, the older women, they usually marry before the age of 15. So they may have begun menstruating after marriage. So then the belief came that menstruation is after sex, is a result of sex. So but now, like as most parts of the world, now women they marry late, right? So now they menstruate before marriage, but then people think that they have had sex and therefore is menstruating. So in this article, there was a girl who said that she was beaten by her father when he saw her dress stained because he believed that she had sex and therefore is bleeding. So I think this could greatly affect a girl's self-confidence, self-esteem, and even relationships with their parents. And because of this, they often hide the onset of their menstruation because of fear of their family's reactions.
Alright, so moving on to myth number 6. You can't get pregnant if you have sex during your period. So, how do I explain this? Okay, so guys, there are 3 instances where you can get pregnant if you have sex on your period. So number 1 is if bleeding during ovulation is mistaken for a period. Number 2 is if you are someone with irregular cycles. And number 3 is if you're someone with shorter menstrual cycles. So let's start with the first one, which is thinking that you're on your period when you're actually not.
Yeah, why don't we start with the term ovulation? And
Yeah.
maybe people will understand better that way.
Yeah. So, all right. So, guys, ovulation is the time that your body releases a new egg. Okay, this is the time that you are the most fertile. And during this period, some people can bleed, which could be easily mistaken for a period. So, during this time, if you go ahead and have sex with your partner, thinking that you just got your period, bam, you're gonna get pregnant, right? So, this is the first way you get pregnant from sex on your period. Now, the second way you can get pregnant from sex on your period is if you are someone with irregular cycles. So, ovulation happens around 14 days before the start of your next period. This is something that you guys need to understand very clearly because a lot of people ask questions from us like regarding this thing. So, I'm going to again stress this point. Ovulation happens around 14 days before the start of your next period. But if you're someone with irregular cycles, you can't apply this 14-day concept to calculate the date of ovulation because you might not know when you might get your next period, right?
Yeah.
So remember guys, you can only apply this 14-day concept to someone who has regular cycles, right? So if you are someone with irregular cycles, then yes, there is a chance that you can get pregnant from sex on your period. Now, the last way, the other way that you can get pregnant if you have sex on your period is if you are someone with short cycles. Now, say for example, I am someone with shorter regular cycles. Now, if the average length of my cycle is 24 days, now what's my ovulation date? That is 24 minus 14, isn't it? Now I'm applying the 14-day concept to my regular cycles. So here I am assuming that my next cycle is also 24 days long, like my previous cycle. So in that case, I will be ovulating on the 10th day of my cycle, isn't it? Now, if my period is 7 days long and I have sex on the 7th day of my period, the sperm can survive in our body for up to 5 days. Like when a sperm enters our body, it can it can live up to 5 days. So this means that the sperm that is living in my system for 5 days can coincide with my date of ovulation. So in other words, I will be releasing an egg while the sperm is still hanging out in my body. So the sperm will go and meet the egg again, and bam, you're pregnant. So these are the 3 ways that you can get pregnant from if you have sex on your period. This is actually very rare, but this is possible. But this is not something that commonly happens, So I really hope you all understood it. I just really want to explain this because a lot of people don't understand this, and I mean a lot of my friends have asked me to explain this like multiple times. Yeah.
So the best way you can avoid all these unwanted pregnancies is to keep track of your period. So there are so many tracking apps. If you're using an iPhone, then they have the built-in health app which has the function of tracking your menstrual cycle. If not, you can always download apps like Flow, and you can keep track of your menstrual cycle with the use of these apps. And also to use contraception, because it also prevents unwanted pregnancies and also prevent any sexual transmitted diseases. So it has the double advantage.
Actually, a lot of people these days don't know the date of their last period, right?
Yeah. In the hospital, when we ask women their last period date before ordering a pregnancy test, most of them, they do not remember the last period date.
Yeah.
So tracking is very important. It's something that all people who are menstruating should do.
Definitely. Alright, moving on to myth number 7. Menstrual cups are one size and it fits all. So menstrual cups, they come in various sizes and designs to accommodate the to meet the needs of all people, right? So because not every person's body looks the same, right? So choosing the right size and type of menstrual cup is actually very important if you want to avoid things like leakage, any discomfort caused by menstrual cups, or difficulty in inserting or removing them.
And I think there are so many YouTube videos that explain how to find your right size. And also the menstrual cup packagings that they come in, they also have instructions on how to find your size. But still, if these methods are confusing, and if you're finding it hard to find your correct size, and you can always ask help from a doctor or a nurse or any healthcare official and help you find your size and then be comfortable during your period, right? And also another thing that you should get used to using menstrual cycle is because it's biodegradable. It's safe for the environment, right? And you can protect the environment as well.
Alright, so I'm gonna ask a quick question from you guys. How many of you guys have not washed your hair during your period because you think it can make your period cramps worse?
I think I'm one of those people.
Yeah, guys, there's no such thing like that. There's no research or study that states that a girl cannot wash their hair or shouldn't take a shower when they're on their period. Actually, a warm bath can help you with the painful cramps you get during your period. And not bathing during menstruation is not hygienic at all, and it can even cause reproductive tract infections. So I think relaxing in a bubble bath or taking a shower will help you to freshen up. It will cheer you up a little bit and also help you to cope with your symptoms a little bit better. So, don't believe in these kind of myths,
Yeah. Okay, so myth number 9, PMS is not real. So what is PMS? PMS is premenstrual syndrome, and a lot of people think this is all in their mind. It's something that women exaggerate, and it's not something real, but it is an actual problem that people who menstruate go through. So PMS is basically emotional and physical symptoms like bloating, like headaches, and certain mood changes like depression and irritation, also fatigue and cramps that occur like a week or 2 before the start of your period. And usually the symptoms are worse 4 days before the start of your period and then starts relieving 2 to 3 days after it begins. So it is due to the hormonal changes that occur during a woman's monthly cycle.
Yeah, so PMS is not a made up concept, guys. Like, a lot of people believe that
Yeah.
this is not something that's, I mean, this is not something that's real,
Real,
you
yeah.
know. It's a legit condition, it's a challenging condition that can significantly impact the quality of life of people who go through
Experience
it,
it, yeah.
you know. Myth number 10, you should get your first period before you are 14. Yeah. So, guys, the age at which a person gets their first period, it's different from person to person, and several factors affect it, like your genetics, your the nutrition, overall health, and even hormonal changes. So the myth that a girl must have their first period before the age of 14 is not real, it's false.
Yeah, and even though many start menstruating between the age of 9 and 16, some can start later than that, some can start earlier than that, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to remember that each of our bodies, it develops in its own pace.
Yeah.
And if you have concerns about your menstrual health or development, it's best to consult a doctor and see if you have any underlying problems that's hindering your development, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think this is our last myth.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, a very interesting myth that even we sometimes find convincing to believe, of course, out of personal
Precisely.
experience, is that people's periods will sync up if they spend enough time together. So, this concept of menstrual cycle synchronization, it's also known as the McClintock effect. And this is a controversial topic, guys, because there's no scientific evidence to prove this statement. So, I mean, studies which have been done to find out if this is true or not have produced mixed results till now, with some studies showing weak evidence to support it and some finding no correlation at all.
Yeah, because medically speaking, there are certain factors like your hormonal variations and the cycle length, and also external factors that can influence a person's menstrual cycle. So just by spending enough time together, it is unlikely that your menstrual cycle will sync up, right?
Yeah. All right, guys, so this is the end of our menstrual myths busting session. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Hope you enjoyed it and cleared any misconceptions you had regarding periods. Also, we are sure that you must even have learned about some myths that you've never heard of in your life. So I think we are gonna wrap up with this.
Yeah, so stay updated on our upcoming episodes by following us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also YouTube, where we'll be posting a video presentation of our podcast.
Yeah.
And we will be uploading the topic of our next discussion soon. So have a nice day and stay tuned.
Stay tuned, guys. Bye bye.